Welcome to the recorded version of Home Safety for Seniors, part of the Family Caregiver Support webinar series brought to you by the American Society on Aging and a generous sponsorship from Home Instead Senior Care.
All right, our presenter today is Molly Carpenter. Author, speaker, trainer, and family caregiver, Molly Carpenter brings years of personal and professional senior care experience and training to families dealing with dementia care. In her current role, Molly works with a team responsible for ensuring that the Home Instead Senior Care Network's 60,000 caregivers worldwide have the resources necessary to effectively provide quality care in the home and understand the importance of their work enhancing the lives of those that they serve. Molly holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Family Science with a gerontology specialization from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and a master's degree in education with a gerontology specialization from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And with that, I want to turn the floor over to our presenter, Molly Carpenter. Thanks for being here again with us today, Molly.
Thank you, Steve. It's my pleasure. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you all are today. Welcome to today's webinar on home safety. This is one of those topics that's really important for the quality of life for seniors that want to remain at home. And it also is one of those topics for family caregivers. It's difficult for them to broach with their senior loved one because when they do talk about home safety, it really starts to affect that person's independence. So as you can see on this slide, we need to talk about this topic again because I think sometimes it seems obvious to all of us, but it's still a major factor in seniors staying home. So we're going to discuss some ways today that we can help inform these family caregivers, ensure that their senior loved one is safe at home. We've learned that nearly 20 million seniors ages 65 and older visit the emergency room each year, with almost a third of these visits related to injuries. Now, many of these are sustained in the place where seniors are meant to feel the safest, and that's at home. So on the next slide, let's look at our objectives for today. Throughout the presentation, we're going to really revisit some of the reasons why home safety is so important. We're going to recognize the effects of aging on safety. You know, this is just another way to kind of look at this topic, and it might be a good way to really help family caregivers understand how aging and the aging process can impact their senior loved one's safety. We're also going to identify the warning signs that a senior is struggling and maybe some of those potential dangers that are in the home. And of course, learn ways to help families communicate with loved ones on safety issues. As I said before, this seems to be one of those topics that's hard for families to broach with their loved one and really talk about because there's so many factors at stake and so many, the dignity of the seniors at stake. So it's a very delicate conversation. So we will talk about that a little bit today as well. I want to start with some research, though, on the next slide. Now, we surveyed seniors and adult children of seniors in the U.S. and in Canada, and as well as emergency room doctors. And what we've learned is that the seniors we surveyed said that that well over 1/4 of their trips to the hospital or emergency rooms were caused by falls or other household accidents. Now, this is interesting. So we also heard that more than 85% of seniors have done nothing to prepare their homes for aging, which in turn would help them, safeguard against these accidents. And then furthermore, when we asked the adult children, 65% in the U.S. and 71% in Canada, 71%, said that their parents' homes have at least one potential safety issue. So you can see a disconnect between what the senior sees versus what the adult children are seeing. And these safety issues range from large issues like staircases to smaller issues like rugs and lighting. But the bottom line is that safety issues can be overwhelming to the adult children and to the senior themselves. Now, I'm sure you all have a story of a loved one that has a safety concern in their home, and I definitely have one about my grandmother. She had basement stairs that I was terrified myself to walk down. Think very steep and think very skinny stairs. And she would say to me, I've been down those stairs a million times. I'm fine. And she would say, I know how to hold the handle. I know how to not fall. I know to watch my step. And she would tell me then how to navigate these stairs, a person a lot younger than her. So it was a constant battle. And it was hard because the bottom line is myself and our family, we did not feel safe with her going down the stairs. And so it also did something to our peace of mind. I mean, we would worry like, boy, I hope she doesn't go down the stairs today. So you're at your job or you're at work or you're at your home and you're just worried that she's going to go down the stairs and this is going to be the day she's going to fall. So we know that a lot of these caregivers are working full time and they don't live in. So imagine that extra stress and worry that these adult children are feeling about these issues. So let's go to the next slide and look and see more of the research about what the ER docs are saying, because this is great information. The emergency room doctors in the U.S. and Canada estimate that about half of all home accidents experienced by seniors can be prevented. That's amazing. That's a great number and a great statistic to share with families. Nearly all doctors surveyed agreed that not having help at home is a risk factor for seniors and could cause injuries and have the potential for accidents. We also heard from those emergency room doctors in both countries that more than 60% of seniors they see could benefit from some extra support. So when you think about what the physicians are saying, they see this as a major concern, these home accidents, and they are telling us that they are very preventable. The seniors, as we saw on the last slide, they see this as a little bit of a problem, and then the family caregiver sees this as a major problem. So that's why this is such a difficult topic to broach, and it's really good that we review this on occasion to talk about this home safety to really help this issue and prevent these accidents. Now, one of the major reasons that seniors end up in the emergency room is falls. So let's talk about falls on the next slide. Before we address all the other home safety challenges, we have to think about the effects of aging on safety, on a person's safety. And I'm going to start with mobility, and that's where these falls come into play. Now, many falls can be prevented. There's quite a few things, and I know this is information you all are very aware of, but I think it is worth re-mentioning to get this top of mind again to really talk to families. Physical activity can go a long way towards fall prevention. With a doctor's okay, there's walking and water workouts and Tai Chi, which is that sort of gentle exercise that involves a slow and graceful dance-like movements. Those are some great exercise ideas. Also looking at activities that reduce the risk of falls are strengthening activities or any activities that help with balance and coordination and flexibility. And, one of the things I hear a lot is that seniors avoid physical activity because they're afraid to fall. I know a lot of you have probably heard that as well. This is where a family caregiver could turn to a physical therapist or look for a local program in the community that could design a program or carefully monitor an exercise program that their loved one could be a part of. A physical therapist really can create a custom exercise program aimed at improving balance and flexibility, muscle strength and gait, and really customize it based on which chronic conditions or which ailments the senior has. So it's a really good option to share with families. If you've been on a webinar with me before, you know that exercise and nutrition are hot buttons for me. And I can't stress enough the importance of this point to drive home to family caregivers. If their loved one does not move, it will lead to falls. And if they are concerned, like I said, a PT or a doctor can really help with these suggestions. I think that families sometimes think exercise means walking or running miles or going to the gym, but there's so many simple chair exercises and stretches that could really benefit the senior. So again, just a point to make there. Here's another mind shift that we can help families understand. Being a caregiver, Your mind is on helping and making life better or easier for the person that they're caring for. However, that doesn't mean that we do everything for them. So, for example, if a daughter is over at her mother's house or her father's house and her mother says, let's say the daughter's name is Sally. Sally, will you go into the bedroom and get my sweater for me? Well, naturally, the family caregiver is going to go into the bedroom and go and get the sweater. But if mom is able to get up and walk and get it herself, it really would still be good to encourage her to move. Now, and think about this. Even though that's a small task, think how this could add up throughout the day. It's really just those little things that can make a big difference. So this is just one example, and it's really hard for families because and especially for caregivers, right, because they always want to do for the person. They always want to help them and do whatever they can. But there's also a point where we need to understand the benefits of the movement. So it's okay to say, you know, Mom, if you're feeling good, I'll go with you, or I'll help you grab it, but let's go together. Or I want to show you something in the bedroom, and so let's go in there together. So it's just a way to encourage that movement. Now, another important tips for families is to be mindful of medications. Some medications, or even the combination of medications, can have major side effects, such as dizziness and drowsiness. This can make falling more likely. So it's important to encourage families to have a doctor or a pharmacist review all those medications that can help reduce this chance of those side effects and the different drug interactions. Okay, on the next slide, let's look at the 5 senses and how they can affect aging and safety. Now, I bring this up and look at it this way because sometimes I think it's important for families to understand, and this might be another way to help them understand the risks and how important safety is. We need to ask these family caregivers to sort of put themselves in the shoes of their loved one and really try to understand what the effects of aging can have on safety. So let's start with eyesight. You know, by the time someone is 60, pupils decrease to about a third of the size they were at age 20. Add to that aging-related eye conditions, you know, the macular degeneration and the cataracts, and everything just got really blurry. So consider what might happen in a living room, for example, in a home with poor lighting. Will the person be able to see a throw rug? Will they see a cord? So it's just, again, thinking about it from the senses and the effects of aging. So let's go to smell. Now, the sense of smell can diminish, especially after age 70. Because of the loss of nerve endings and less mucus in the nose, that's why that sense of smell diminishes. So the biggest concern when we think about smell is obviously smelling smoke or fire. The smell also greatly affects our sense of taste, and we all know how important it is for a nutritious diet for a senior. So again, thinking about it from that aspect with these families is important. Taste. We start out with more than 10,000 taste buds. Now, over time, they decrease in both numbers and mass with aging. Also, we've got to think about those medications again. They may decrease a senior's appetite, making an individual vulnerable to malnutrition. Seasoning foods with fresh herbs can bring out the flavor. That's just one idea for a quick fix. And then touch. We think about the decreased blood flow to nerve endings as we age. It can really reduce the sense of pain and temperature. Imagine that tingling feeling at the end of your fingers and toes, like when they fall asleep, you know, during the day. If you've leaned on something too long, your leg or your foot too long, it kind of gets this tingling feeling. It's not fun, and that's that can be a permanent thing as you age with that decreased blood flow. So seniors may be unable to feel water that's too hot or cold or sense slick spots on the floor. And then we think about hearing. Our ears control hearing and sense of balance, of course, both of which can be compromised as we age. An older adult could miss a visitor if they don't hear the doorbell. They could miss hearing a fire alarm. They could miss I think this is important when we don't think about a lot, is mis-socializing with friends because they can't hear the conversation or they can't hear the person next to them talking and having a conversation. So obviously one of those quick fixes there is the hearing aids. That's why those are so important to encourage. It also might be fun, or a different idea. I don't know if this is your idea of fun, but fun to really have families even experience what it's like to age and be a senior. And there's many, many examples on the internet about this, but one example we use is we take the gloves that you use during care, and so just a little latex gloves, and we put cotton balls in the end, and we put a popsicle stick in each finger. And we tell our caregivers that this simulates joint stiffness and that decreased sense of touch. So we really try to get our caregivers in the mindset this might be an easy thing for you to try with family caregivers so they really understand how hard it is and how the effects of aging can have on safety. Again, there's many examples of this, of how to simulate aging to Google. There's many, many examples. Okay. Let's start to talk about solutions on the next slide. Based on our research findings, we have developed some resources to help professionals, all of you, as well as adult children to help their seniors stay safe at home. Now we're going to talk through some of the key things that can be changed within the home at a minimal cost. We're also going to look at a home safety checklist that we recommend be performed once a year. And then we've got some additional online resources we're going to share with you all today as well. So first, I want to look at 5 fixes under $500 on the next slide. If we go back to the survey that we conducted, remember that 65% of adult children say that their loved one has at least one potential safety hazard in their home. Now, at Home Instead, we worked with a gentleman named Dan Bowden. He's the founder of the Certified Aging in Place Specialist, or CAPS, and that's a designation for the National Association of Home Builders, and they offered a lot of safety suggestions for budget-conscious families. So the first idea, as you can see on the slide, is looking at those, the wall-mounted shower heads and replacing them with the handled shower heads that have a hose as well. Now, handled shower heads are both convenient and safe because a senior can use these devices and they're adjustable to height, and they can also convert to a handheld one. So if you're sitting in the shower, you can easily use the shower head. Now, the cost is generally less than $100, but when you add in the plumber's costs, for labor, that could be anywhere from $150 to $200, depending on the labor and how long it takes. Another good fix is installing grab bars on the walls near the tub or shower. Seniors could be tempted to grab the towel rack or the towel bar or even a shower curtain and put themselves at risk for falling. Now, a good grab bar is anywhere from $30 to $60 for a good quality grab bar. Again, we've got to factor in labor, and so again, that could be anywhere from $100 to $200 depending on the labor and the person that's asked to do it. Another great idea for a fix under $500 is to convert to lever handle faucets. Usually water flow and temperature could be easier for those arthritic fingers to control with a lever faucet. So think about that. That's where that aging activity where you'd maybe put the popsicle sticks in the glove. It's hard when you have arthritis to turn those knobs. So a lever might be a little bit easier. Now the cost of those are usually between $150 to $250, and then again the labor cost for a plumber to install. Another great idea is add lighting to closets and pantries. Dark closets can not only be a safety hazard, but they can make dressing more difficult, and they may judge distance wrong or may not see a shoe on the ground. So there's a lot of issues there. And A light can be installed. It just sort of depends on where the closet is. There's those battery-operated lights that are less than $25 that can be easily installed, or if you do have to go through an attic or go through a wall or anything, then you would need an electrician to install a light, and that can be around $200 to $250. And then add swing clear hinges. Narrow doorways could be difficult for walkers and wheelchairs, so replacing the standard hinges with a swing clear hinge allows the door to swing completely clear of the door opening. Now, the cost of this is for a handyman or a carpenter, and it's about $150, and a pair of those hinges is anywhere from $20 to $30. So again, another really economical fix for safety. Okay, on the next slide, let's look at the safety checklist. And this is just a visual of the front of the safety checklist. But, and so we're going to go through that in just a few slides. But I just want to make a point about that a lot of senior home safety experts recommend that our family caregivers and the adult children take at least one day each year to perform a thorough safety check of their parents' home. And maybe encourage families to make this near a holiday or so it's a yearly thing that's on everybody's mind. One family that I know of does it every year on New Year's Day. So it's just a quick day where you get out the checklist and you just check everything over, always involving the senior themselves so that they can see the potential things that the family's looking for as well. So in conjunction with the University of Buffalo, Home Instead, we built this safety checklist that's available for download. And I'm going to cover the checklist, like I said, and we're going to go through some of the suggestions. And then I'll tell you at the end where to get this checklist and where you can encourage families to go and get this checklist. So I want to talk through some of the main rooms in the home. I want to talk about what the issues are and then solutions, a few solutions, because I don't want to go over everything, but I just think if you could hear some of the issues and then see some of the quick tips, it will be very helpful when you're talking to families. On the next slide, then, let's start with the bedroom and the living room. So there's a few safety concerns in both of these rooms. You know, one of the big concerns would be carpet and rugs. An easy solution for families is to get that double-sided tape or a rug pad to secure the rug to the floor. Now, that's one thing to suggest. The other thing to suggest is no rugs. That's one of the things I often suggest. But there are those families. I've recently, actually, a few months ago, was with the family, and the senior, it was a Southern Belle, a beautiful, beautiful, lovely woman, and she wanted her rugs. I talked to her about the rugs. I said to her, I'm very concerned about these rugs, and she absolutely insisted on the rugs. So what we did was we went to get the double-sided tape, and we looked at the rug pads to make sure it was secure. The other thing we did was we changed out some of the high-traffic rugs that were a little more dangerous she had a few rugs that were very level and very floor level, so you couldn't really sense a difference between the floor and the rug. We put those in the high-traffic area. So, again, looking at it through the senior eyes, it's really important to, again, get the person to buy into it, but also, even if they want those rugs, there's some easy fixes. For carpet, you know, we always got to be mindful of tears, and, you know, a little glue or carpet staples can fix those pretty easily, but that's why it's important to do a check to make sure, you know, you're on top of those tears. And if the carpet is necessary, I think recommending to families to use a low pile rug better than like a shag rug, for example. Also, families, helping them understand that even if you have carpet stretched or you know, once a year, making sure there's no bumps, having the carpet stretched is a very low cost that can really eliminate a lot of those bumps if there's any bumps in the carpet. All right, let's talk about clutter. It might be a good time to encourage the family caregivers to work with the senior at home to clean out the closets and the drawers of items that the person no longer uses. Organization is the key to preventing too much clutter. So maybe even thinking about adding shelving or shelving units, different ideas around that. Those downsizing and eliminating bigger pieces of furniture might be a good suggestion. Adding bookcases or magazine racks to store newspapers and magazines that would otherwise be on the floor. Another good tip to share with families. And then lighting and glare. Some solutions around lighting and the glare are night lights are a good option for if it's too dark at night. Another great solution that we've heard is using that rope lighting. It's very easy to tack to the baseboards, and it would be a good option to put it along the hallways that connect the bathroom to the bedroom. So even it's just a little bit of light to guide the path to those rooms in the middle of the night. Even when you think about lighting, there might be a way to increase the wattage of light bulbs. A lot of times when we have those desk lamps, they're at 25 watts. Well, if it's allowable and it's safe, why not try a 60 watt or a 75 watt light bulb if the light allows for that change? The other thing to think about is, can the senior reach and switch the light on and off? When we're talking about glare from the windows, and again, when we're talking about turning the light on and off, a clapper. We've all seen the commercials. I know you've all seen them, where you can clap and it controls the light switch on and off. It really is a good solution. There's also remote controls now with a lot of lighting options. Even sometimes rearranging furniture that can allow better access to wall switch or lamps is something to think about and something to have families think about. And then let's talk about furniture height. You know, if the bed's too low, that's it. You can tell if the bed's too low if the senior's knees are above the hips when sitting on the bed. So bed risers can be installed to raise the height. Again, those are not very costly. If the bed's too high, then we consider maybe removing the bed frame or use a lower profile mattress or box spring. This is a great one for families to do as well, is to have them sit in all the chairs and, you know, look at the different tables or nightstands that are around in the living room and the bedroom and make sure there's nothing wobbly. Legs are wobbly and everything's very, very sturdy. If there is something wobbly, got to repair that furniture or remove it. It's pretty easy to repair a lot of that furniture by just re-gluing legs and armrests. If the chair is too low, it's easy to add a cushion or a pillow on the seat to raise up the height. So just, again, I think a lot of us have heard some of these solutions and know about them, but it's great to have it all in one place in the safety checklist, but it's also great to hear this information again, so when you're talking to families, you've got these on the top of your mind. And then cords. Extension cords to run electrical cords behind furnishings might be an idea. Rearranging the furniture, again, that where things need to be plugged in so they're near an outlet. Maybe power strips is a good idea if there's several cords that can be tucked in behind furniture. So lots of good ideas. As you can see, though, a lot of issues in the bedroom and the living room that we have to be aware of. On the next slide, then, let's talk about the bathroom. Another place that can have some serious safety issues. When you think about the bathroom and the shower, we've talked a little bit about grab bars already when we were looking at the fixes under 500, but it's really important for families even to do that check where you're looking for the loose towel racks or curtain rods. That's a good sign or a sign that the older adult is using those things to grab onto, and that is a good cue or clue for family caregivers to install those grab bars. Even near not only just the shower and tub, but even consider installing those grab bars near the toilet is a very good idea. And we've talked a little bit about the floor surface already as well. Again, rubber mat that has an adhesive, that has some sort of backing on the back of it so it doesn't slip. But also those there's decals for the bottom of the tub that we've all seen. Those are sometimes okay to use. It depends on which one you're using. There's so many options out there for that. And then the tub and the toilet height. If the bathtub is too high, we need to consider that tub or transfer bench. And I think a lot of families know a lot about the transfer bench. But one of the things I don't know if a lot of families are aware of is that raised toilet seat for stools that are too low. You probably need to contact a plumber about installing them, so you would probably have to encourage these families to contact a plumber. But always encouraging them to check a medical supply store for these types of items, very important. And then the temperature, the water thermostat, it's really important to check those thermostats and what levels those are at and the appropriate levels, and make sure nothing's uncomfortable. Another good idea is to make sure the hot and cold water faucets are clearly labeled. So one family that we've talked to actually painted part of the levers, red and blue to distinguish hot and cold. So I thought that was a great creative solution that we've learned from families on how to help seniors understand those two between hot and cold. And then access to supplies and medications. Got to make sure medications are stored in cabinets that are easy to reach. If the cabinet's too high, the person may have trouble reaching it. And if it's too low, same thing, bending down and trying to find something can be very difficult for an aging adult. This is where that family caregiver needs to go into the bathroom and sort of test those things out, reach up and see how high it is and understand, is this something that mom and dad can still navigate? One of the solutions is for this is to really think about different shelving options that are at waist level. There's lots of storage options. I'm sure a lot of you've all seen them, where you can put a storage even over the back of the toilet. There you can add a little shelf. There's just so many storage solutions out there for that, to making sure everything's on waist level and easily reachable. Okay, on the next slide, let's look at the kitchen. Now, as we move into these rooms, we're going to start sounding a little repetitive, so I'm going to talk about different solutions for each room, because a lot of them you're going to see are the same problems, but there's just different solutions as we move from room to room. So as I just said in the bathroom, the access to the supplies and the food, it's the same thing as in the kitchen. When we've got to either move items to the shelves that are at their level where they can easily reach them, maybe installing hooks on the walls for pots and pans that they use frequently. With my grandmother, there was this little wire shelf that we put. It fit right on the back of the sink, and that's where all of the dish soap and the sponges and everything like that went, so she didn't have to bend over and get the dish soap out from underneath the sink. So again, just getting creative with those storage solutions. And then we've talked a lot about clutter already on this webinar as a major safety concern. But in the kitchen, some different solutions would be using a Lazy Susan to help organize a countertop. Maybe even moving the kitchen table closer to the counter for additional workspace. Maybe adding one of those islands that's easily rolled in and out, but the wheels do lock, so they're very safe. Also, maybe there's too much furniture in the space in the kitchen. I've seen a lot of families, and the family I talked about earlier with my little Southern Belle, they removed a leaf from the table because this woman loved her dining room table and she insisted on having it, but it seated 12 people. So what the family did was take out 2 leaves. So it had 6, it could fit 6, but what they did was then push it up against the wall and take out some of the chairs. So it was easy for her to go right in and sit down and be able to push her chair out easily and get out and be able to navigate through the kitchen easily. And then, again, lighting, another concern in the kitchen as well. So we've talked about increasing the wattage levels. Maybe think about encouraging families to put that under-counter lighting in, though. Even sometimes there's the ones that just stick and you put a battery in them and all you do is tap them to turn them on. They're very inexpensive. I have lots of those in my own home, actually. And if you've got to, again, install something, an electrician will need to be called. Maybe if you need some extra lighting overhead, that's an option. Chemicals is something that could be a problem in the kitchen and in the bathroom. In the kitchen, we mostly talk about the cleaning supplies and other supplies that could pose danger. Now, this really comes into play when a person has Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. So if the person has dementia, encouraging those families to lock those cabinets that have those chemicals in them, or just removing the chemicals, or again considering a higher shelf for some of those chemicals. Now, surfaces, just like the bathroom, it's hard because a lot of the surfaces in the kitchen have potential for slips as well, just like the bathroom. And again, we've talked about that rugs aren't always the best solution. So suggesting comfortable shoes that fit well or socks with the non-skid sole. I unfortunately have again, about my grandmother, she took the dishwashing soap from the kitchen to the bathroom to clean her sink one day, and she did not notice that she leaked some of the dishwashing soap on the kitchen floor. So when she came back to put the soap away, she fell, and she did break her leg. And so, which caused rehab and caused time away and all of those different things. So this is really hard when it comes to things like that. Our family, we probably should have hired a caregiver sooner because her eyesight was poor. She couldn't see the soap on the floor. And that kitchen, we took the rugs out, and that kitchen always has those slippery surfaces just like the bathroom. So this is a really hard one. One thing that I've seen families do is try to change out the tile so it's darker or it has a different contrast. But again, that's a very expensive thing to do. I have seen families do it, but it's very hard in the kitchen and the bathroom when you think about those slippery surfaces. I think another issue in the kitchen we need to talk about is those spoiled foods. This is when earlier we talked about the sense of smell, and that could be one factor. There's a lot of dangers we all know to eating outdated or spoiled foods, and one of the solutions is to either encourage families to help their loved one freeze things, divide bags into leftovers, and put things in the freezer for future use, or maybe take a Sharpie, a really black Sharpie marker, and mark in real big letters the expiration date on each of those items that can spoil easily. And then we look at the sharps or the utensils in the kitchen. Again, this is a judgment call for families. We need to keep the dignity in mind and sort of remove those dangerous utensils if necessary. All right, on the next slide is the laundry room. And a couple of these we've already talked about from the other rooms, so I'm going to kind of skim over lighting because we've talked about the lighting. The stairs is a little bit unique if the laundry room is in the basement. We've got to make sure there's a very good railing. We've got to make sure maybe there's stair treads or a carpet runner that can be installed. This is important for families to continually to walk down those stairs, to walk through the basement, make sure there's no clutter, make sure the stairs are steady. And we've even had one family paint the bottom of the stair a different color to sort of distinguish that this was the last stair. So very clever ideas. Also a big one is the weight of supplies. Our laundry detergent bottles are huge. And so it'd be great to encourage family members to buy the smaller bottles. Don't go to Sam's or Costco for this one if you're buying for your senior loved one, or divide the detergent into smaller bottles. Same with carrying baskets. if the laundry is too heavy, this might be, we've all seen families locate the laundry to the main floor living, which is a huge expense and a lot of work. But this might also be a good time if the laundry is getting to be too much to suggest that caregiver. And then finally on the next slide, we look at the garage and the yard. We've talked about handrails and how important that is. It's the same with the steps going outside or to the garage or leading out the front door or back door. I think a unique one about the outside is the trash and the tools and all the chemicals. So got to make sure there's enough, the trash containers are big enough, but they can't be too big to where somebody could not move those very easily. So maybe those trash cans being too big, if a neighbor could help move them, or if the cans, we've got to make sure they're wheeled cans. The power tools and the chemicals, again, where this could be a factor is if dementia is present. So always want to encourage families to understand those risks and remove or lock those things up if necessary. Driveways and sidewalks, this is important. This is why this yearly checklist is so great. Every year walking the driveway, looking for cracks or broken steps or where the sidewalk might need to be repaired, very, very important. And then fixing those as necessary. We've talked about lighting, again, just installing more lighting and more powerful lighting. Even activated lighting for motion is a good idea for outside. And then the doorbells and knocking. There are devices out there that enables the ringing doorbell to trigger a light, so that might be helpful, just so that the person knows that someone is at the door. All right, let's go to communication. You're going to hear me say on the next slide, thanks Steve, you're going to hear me say a lot that communication is the key when it comes to this safety talk. And it's the key in everything that these family caregivers do. And I know it's important for all of you as you're talking to families, this is where it matters. Communication matters so, so much. It's important to convey a lot of the messages that we've talked about today. And it's really hard for family caregivers because it's a role reversal. They're now the protector. They're trying to ensure that the safety, that their parent is safe and cared for and is safe at home. So it's hard for family caregivers during this transition time. So when we're talking to them, we've got to stay positive and helpful. And the caregiver has to stay positive and helpful when talking with their family. Encourage these family caregivers that arguing is not going to do any good. Like I told you about my grandma on the stairs, arguing got us nowhere. We listened to her concerns, understand why she wanted to go into the basement, and then offering solutions was very, very important for our family to understand. So once we understood that she was worried about water coming in her basement, every time we came to her house, somebody went down and checked to make sure there was no water in the basement. So it's little things like that went a long way to her not agreeing not to go downstairs, understanding the risk, and having a solution in hand. The other thing is when we think about, the dignity and respect, our family actually considered putting a door on the basement and locking it and not giving her a key. I know that sounds terrible. It sounds harsh to even say it out loud to all of you, but that would have showed her no respect at all, and it would have been a terrible move for her dignity as well. So we had to constantly remember how hard this was for her and put ourselves in her shoes. This was a woman who could do everything on her own and was completely independent and worked so hard and kept her house up so well. So this was so hard for her. And so we really had to realize that this was really about her and her dignity and that she did not want to lose her independence. So that's when we started to come up with other solutions. So really reminding family caregivers to be mindful of the dignity and respect. And that's where that empathy comes into play, is trying to put yourself in their shoes. I've said that several times today. It's just so, so important. Listening is very, very important. A lot of times we don't want to listen, and our family caregivers don't want to listen. They just want to do what they think is right and just do it. but it's important. This is one of those conversations where it's important that we listen. That's going to lead to successful solutions. Encouraging loved ones to take some time to really visit and understand and have a good talk with their senior loved one is the biggest thing I could leave you with today, that you really try to help these families understand that and really come up with solutions together. Okay, finally on the next slide are resources. I know you all have a lot of questions, so I want to get to those. Our resources are from, you can see them listed there. We worked with the University of Buffalo. You can see the Certified Aging in Place Specialist website. The place where you can get the safety checklist that's downloadable and free for you to use and to give to family caregivers is makinghomesaferforseniors.com. There's also a lot of great information on the National Safety Council website and the Canada Safety Council website as well. So I thank you all so much today for joining the webinar. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Steve for questions.
All right. Thanks very much, Molly. Great presentation. Joining us for the Q&A is going to be Erin Albers, also from Home Instead Senior Care. So thanks for joining us today, Erin.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get right to it here and jump into the questions here. Is there any certification or training on doing a safety to prevent accidents or injuries at senior homes?
Is there any sort of certification needed? I am not positive on that. In the tools and resources that we created, we actually do have a legal disclaimer on there that says that this is not done by trained professionals, and so it's done to the best of our knowledge and abilities. So I'm not sure if there's anything formal out there, but we do try to protect ourselves in knowing that we'll do the best that we can to notice things that can help with the safety issues, but not be liable should something happen.
Okay, and can you let us know where the information came from that was referenced on the earlier research slide that we saw as part of the presentation?
If it was on the research that Molly shared, that's actually information that we did our own original research on, so that can be, all of that research can be found on caregiverstress.com. If you do is that what you're referring to, the research around the home safety that Molly shared? Yep.
So again, that's caregiverstress.com?
Yes.
Okay.
And under Making Home Safer for Seniors.
Okay. Excellent. So if you have any questions, again, text them into us using the questions option there. And let's keep it rolling here. The next question, do you utilize occupational therapists to do home safety assessments? OTs can be very helpful in addressing needs of older adults to help them remain safely in their home.
Yes, very interesting. My brother's an occupational therapist, and we actually talked to him a lot about that when we developed this program. We do not have a formal relationship with a, we're here at our corporate office, so we don't have a formal relationship with a physical therapy group, but I know that some of our local franchise offices do partner with occupational therapists to provide those types of services, absolutely.
Okay. Erin, we've been talking an awful lot about, going through the home and checking out the various areas for safety. Now, the home with so many nooks and crannies and rooms and everything to think about, it can be kind of overwhelming for an individual to walk in and be able to take in the entire thing at once. So can you walk us through and maybe give us the top couple of examples of potential areas that maybe a caregiver or a family member should look out for, some of the really top ones that are really the most important that should be addressed absolutely first?
Absolutely. I think we need to look at the kitchen. First and foremost, common hazards in the kitchen, of course, the stove and fire, sharp utensils as well. And also the things in cabinets, reaching in and out of cabinets for things can cause the risk, especially for falls, especially if the floor is slippery, if they've just washed dishes. So I'd say the kitchen first and foremost for those types of things, and then the bathroom. Again, just toileting, whether it's using grab bars or making sure that the floor is not slippery again, lack of bath mats, again, the overhead cabinets, if they're trying to get stuff out of a medicine cabinet or reaching for something as they're trying to lift their leg in and out of the bathtub and not having something secure to hold on to. And then just, is the toilet even the correct height? Something to look at there. So I would say if you're going to check anywhere, make sure the kitchen and the bathroom are safe, and then you can then move on to other areas that are less utilized, maybe like Molly talked about, the basement, things in the basement or in the garage, the bedroom. But you can even just take it one room at a time if it does seem overwhelming, but I would definitely start with the kitchen and bathroom.
Okay, sounds good. Next question. How do you overcome cultural barriers regarding aging and home safety?
I'm not sure if can that person be more specific? I mean, there's culture barriers in so many things around caring in general. I don't even know if I can be specific to home safety. If it's something specific around home safety and a culture barrier, it would be great to have a little bit more details on that question.
Okay, yeah. So if that person can send in maybe a little clarification,
yep,
that would be helpful.
Yep.
Okay, next question. So a little bit earlier, Molly was talking about the difficulties sort of faced with talking to older adults about making some home improvements and maybe making some changes that they don't want to make, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about how you can potentially tie this into the fact that aging at home is actually safer and cheaper and preferable to the individuals in question? So how can we sort of communicate this to our family members or clients that making these changes is actually not really going to take away your independence per se, but it's really just kind of shifting things a little bit so that you can maintain your independence in your own home? How to walk us through some best practices on the best ways to communicate that to the people that we're working with or our loved ones?
Right, absolutely. We actually just launched another program called 4070talk.com, and it's all about that communication. So much of this is getting that person to listen and understand that we have their best interest in mind. We want to actually keep them more independent. We want to keep them safe in their home. We don't want to take anything away from them. So how do you go about that? What do those conversations look like? And we've even identified a lot of things in terms of who's talking to the person, whether it be a professional, a family member, if it's a blended family, things to take into account, culture and religious differences. So if you go to 4070talk.com, it's all about the conversation on so many difficult issues such as keeping them safe at home, end-of-life issues, financial issues. None of what we do matters if the conversation can't be had between those family members, and I know that's a big struggle with the professionals working with these families. We can tell families certain things, but if they haven't talked about it amongst themselves or with their senior, that's really going to be a barrier to keep that senior safe at home. So definitely check out 4070talk.com.
Okay, another good resource. Can you talk a little bit about smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors as well as the working batteries? Where does that fit in on the home checklist?
You know, I believe that is an overall, that's something to check overall. I think that we did the smoke detectors on the 6 month. Every 6 months, we were checking the smoke detectors is what we were referencing in the home safety checklist. I think we aligned it with daylight savings time. So when it's daylight savings time going forward or back, that's a time to check your smoke detectors. And then also, I believe that we have a lot of our offices who partner with their local fire department or their utilities committees to actually go in and do free checks of carbon monoxide detectors or smoke detectors. So that's a great partnership that we have in some local communities to make sure that those items are being checked, because we definitely don't want the seniors climbing up on a ladder and checking their own smoke detectors. So either we'll do that as part of a safety check or have a fire department or utility company go in and do that for them.
Okay. Now, we've been talking a lot about this, and it's kind of the stereotypical image of an older adult having problems at home and having a fall or something like that. But in your professional experience, Erin, how prevalent is this? I mean, like how frequently, how often does this happen and is going to affect potentially a caregiving family or someone working with their client?
Well, I mean, it happens all the time according to our research with those ER doctors. They said most of the time somebody comes in to the ER is from something that could have been prevented within the home. So whether it be a fall or an accident of some sort, I mean, they said a high majority of the time this could have been prevented had there been some extra precautionary measures that have taken place. So they're the ones, the ER doctors are really the ones that said we wouldn't see nearly what we see now with aging adults if their homes were safer. So we absolutely know that it starts with safety in the home, and it's up to family, friends, professionals to help make sure that that senior is living in a safe environment.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about, sort of the traditional things that come along with aging, but can you talk a little bit about when it starts getting into working with individuals or family members who have dementia, who it might not necessarily be a physical problem that they have, but when do you start having that conversation around people whose cognitive abilities are starting to be affected and how that can then tie into home safety issues?
Right. We do have a specific section on this home safety program for Alzheimer's and dementia, so some tips and ideas to help with those cognitive issues. So there is actually a highlighted section of that on there because it does kind of go down a different path when you have dementia and Alzheimer's involved. So again, we do highlight that in there. I know one of the things that we did on the Alzheimer's and dementia route is aligning the hallways with like rope lighting from the bed to the bathroom at night, so the person did not get disoriented and not know how to get themselves from their bedroom to the bathroom. So tips and tricks like that. We also have specialized Alzheimer's training that our families and caregivers go through, and there's an entire class around home safety. So that's also something that you can check out on our online resources as well, which is on helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. So I know I'm throwing a lot of resources out there, but we do have information on all of these items, and home safety is definitely covered in every area.
All right, good to know. Well, Erin, we are just about out of time. We've reached the end of our hour, but I want to thank you for joining us today, and I also want to thank Molly Carpenter for joining us. Thanks for another great presentation.
Yeah, thanks to all of you. Again, if you have any questions or need further information or resources on anything, you can absolutely reach out to any of us. Thank you so much, Steve.